Hi, Jaguru. I'd like to invite you all into the present moment and into a heart space, a place where you can just kind of step out of your day and step into a good feeling, step into the presence of God. Let us all behold the Creator in whatever way you call God. Whatever made the Big Bang Boom, there's something greater than us that created and is sustaining, guiding everything, everywhere, all the time. And there's something that guided us all to be here together. So I want to invite you into that heart space. And I just want to call out to each of you and invite you to expand your capacity to receive. And some of you are looking for healing or need healing. I want to invite you to open your heart to healing. And let's ask the divine to step into our lives. And let's step into the opportunity to share our lives and our love and our light with others to help bring that light out, to bring that healing out. So we're here to kind of support each other. We're here to share an energy, a vision, an intention. We're here to receive and to give. So let's first breathe in and just say, I'm open to receive. And I'd like to say, Lord, help me to be a pure vehicle for your love and light and wisdom. And as you breathe out, just sit up straight. Imagine you're stepping into a hot tub or jacuzzi. We can just totally relax now. And as you exhale, drop your shoulders, close your eyes, roll your eyes up, gaze into your mind's eye, and just chill out and relax and feel the subtle currents of energy already flowing in your body. Everything's energy. And so when we work with Kundalini, when we work with Shakti, we're working with energy. And a big part of your training and in our spiritual growth is understanding what we mean by energy. What is spirit? How does spirit animate existence? How does existence exist? How does it come to being? There's like a sacred geometry. There's a pattern to which things form. We see it all around us. We see it in ourselves, for that matter. And we can also look at it mathematically. And Cecilia asked me to explain Nikola Tesla's concept of 369 and how it's kind of a key, a master key to understanding how the universe works. It's like a code. So this is going to be the sacred geometry of life, your life, and life itself. So I want to invite you to gaze into your mind's eye and just gaze into the dark screen of your mind. And that in itself is a meditation, and that in itself will be supporting you and kind of charging you up. So breathe in first, feel the energy in your nervous system, feel it in your chi, feel it in the electromagnetic fields all around your body. Feel your connection with the earth. So the earth itself is radiating, and then there's the spherical radiation, the Schumann resonance, and then there's the electromagnetic field or magnetosphere, and it's charged up, and as you breathe in, you're drawing in the electromagnetism. Yogis call the prana, otherwise known as chi or kai or whatever. So we get that there's all these different like subtle energies flowing in life, just like they flow in an appliance, a computer or your smartphone. And there's currents between appliances, right? And one affects the other, your Wi-Fi, your connection with your 5G or whatever. And we as spirit similarly have a connection with these different subtle energies or circuits within our physical body, and it's being animated by the spirit body. So how do those all interrelate? Well, if we understand 369, we can begin to put maybe a picture to an abstract thought. We can begin to get an insight into the nature of our own existence and how things unfold. Because whenever we look around us, we see it's an expression of energy. Light is energy, sound is energy, movement is energy, heat is energy, thought is energy, emotions are energy, chemical expressions of energy. We have mass is energy, made up of energy particles, atoms. So everything is energy, it seems, within a potentiality. Some things are rising out of a potential to exist that exists for some length and duration of time. It may, in the whole time it's existing, it's changing. energy has changed. So there's even your energy, and you're changing every moment with every breath. Old cells are dying off, new cells are being created. Earth's getting older, some solar systems are dying off, new ones are growing. Old galaxies are dying off, new galaxies are being created. All within an infinite potential that is really reflecting back upon itself and creating its own sense of time. And so we're going to talk about that today. Take a deep breath and gaze into your mind's eye and just imagine there's nothing. Before anything existed, just have some fun with being in the void, just kind of hanging out here in the nothingness. Just love, just a field of love. Be the love. Breathe in and feel the love. So you're connecting with the earth, the atmosphere through your breath, inhaling it into your lungs, feeling it circulating in your nervous system, in the chi and the meridians in your body, in the electromagnetic fields around your body. And now as you breathe in, expand and feel your breath drawing in more life force. And as you breathe out, feel that energy expanding out into the room. And just imagine you're expanding out. You could feel the energy beyond the earth into even the moon and the star, the planets, even outside the galaxy, into what Swamiji would call the unified field. And so there's an understanding by the Siddhas and through Guruji's own realization, and then him showing me that everything in existence, the whole time-space continuum, is simply a reflection of consciousness and apparent differentiation. And that's what 369 begins to reveal to us through the perspective of mathematics and Nikola Tesla's insight and how sacred geometry forms. So if you understand the patterns, the circuits, how they make union and create, you might say a lattice work, creating dimensionality, actually creating dimensions themselves, creating a time-space continuum that creates the apparent differentiation that we call our material universe. How about that? So take a deep breath and let's reflect on the universe and ourself within it. So Nikola was brilliant. He worked with Edison. He actually invented the alternating current. So if you sent electricity down a copper wire, you could move it from point A to point B. One of Nikola's contributions was he said, if we pulse the current, we can get the same effect, but we can actually send the energy farther and more efficiently. And there was a number of reasons. And it explained bipolar currents, AC/DC, and all kinds of other aspects of electricity that was never heretofore known. He was a brilliant man. Even one time Albert Einstein was asked, what did the most brilliant scientists in the world think about such and such? And of course the reporter was referring to Einstein. But Einstein's report to him, he says, well, I'll ask Nikola Tesla when I see him. Because he thought Nikola Tesla was the most brilliant man alive. So he had over 300 patents. And I bought his patents. I bought the book of Tesla patents. I made a antenna in my backyard, and I'm no particular scientist, and I'm certainly not a engineer or electrician, but I created an antenna, and it was just following his patent, and created a circuit, was able to draw, I think I was getting 6 to 9 amps out of the atmosphere, which he said you could do. So that's not a lot of amps, but if you did a number of different antenna and you join the currents together and then you use a capacitor, hell, you could create enough energy to support a whole house. And that's what his intention was. So we know it can be done, but there's people that have control over the energy industry and the fossil fuel industry, and they're the ones that. So people said, well, if that could be done, how come Nikola Tesla didn't further it? He learned how to draw energy from the atmosphere. There's electromagnetic fields. The same energy draws a compass needle north. It's a powerful energy. So you might ask yourself, well, how come we're not using it for our electricity or to run an airplane or a boat or a car or anything else? Well, we could, and it has been done. But the people that control the energy, and particularly the people that control the oil and gas industry, don't want the world to have free energy. They have not only a financial interest, but they have a power interest. They have power over you if they control the energy. So, and this has been discussed in other books I've written, so Nikola was shut down by J.P. Morgan, who was his funder, because Morgan was also the funder of Standard Oil Company, which was Rockefeller, John D. Rockefeller's monopoly. He had 90% of all the distribution. He controlled the market, period. And they still do. All the old Rockefeller holdings have remerged, and they've joined into a conglomerate with the royal families of Europe that owned Shell Oil and British Petroleum. It used to be Royal Dutch Shell because Queen Elizabeth of England and Queen Beatrice of the Netherlands, they went in. The King of Norway went in to drill long before the North Sea drilling. They were down in Indonesia drilling oil. That's what the Japanese were after in World War II. They had to get their troops down to Indonesia to get the oil because we'd cut them off. That's what started World War II. So anyway, when Morgan saw that free energy wasn't serving his financial interest, he just cut Nikola off and made sure that no one else he couldn't get funding from anyone else because it's a monopoly. But he was the one that gave us these ideas, and some of these ideas are worth reflecting on. We live in an age where free energy should come into popular understanding. If you run the other idea that Nikola had is if you run two disks, highly magnetized disks, so their ions are charging off, and you move them in opposite directions, and you can keep the space, because negatives and positives want to cancel each other out. But in that place that they're separated, and we can do that now with ceramic metals, for instance, that gap creates a tear, essentially, in the electromagnetic field. So nature naturally wants to fill the tear. It wants to fill that gap. And that force coming in to fill the tear created by the two fields that got separated creates an energy feed. And that can go on indefinitely. And it can also be done through ball lightning. When I was an investment banker, we were working with a company called U.S. Flywheel. And a flywheel is simply a disc. Usually have a high alloy metal inside that can hold a lot of electricity, and they just feed it till there's so much electricity. It's just a ball of electricity. They call it ball lightning. And NASA wanted them because all that energy can be used to move, say, a satellite. You can fit all that energy in a tight space, and so if the satellite needed to adjust its orbit or something, it could feed off of the flywheel, as opposed to making a battery, which is big and bulky and heavy. So as we were looking at this flywheel technology, I stopped and I looked at this one particular flywheel that was just going off, and it was radiating. And I was looking at some meters by it, and the meters were showing a high voltage. I said, well, what's going on over here? He goes, well, that's a confidential. We're not really supposed to talk about this much, but since I was working at a financial capacity with the owners, I was given insight to what they were doing. And what they found is when they got to a certain level energetically, they again could pierce through the veil of the time-space continuum, the certain frequency in which the universe is operating, if you will, and tap into that source of energy. And they said, this thing's been running for years and producing this much energy every day since we got it started. We haven't been feeding it. They had records of when they kind of moved it up to a certain speed, and when they hit a certain place, in other words, all of a sudden they tapped into something. But no one's supposed to know about any of this, because if we had that energy available, the giant moneyed interests would be threatened. Their control. Anyway, but rather than to get into that, what we want to look at is, well, what is everything? So everyone take a deep breath, roll your eyes up, and let's look at what is something. Well, when we look at something, when we begin to differentiate something from something else or something from nothing, there's something that's contrasting it. Something is simply something differentiated through our senses in our mind. And whatever that something is, whether it's a light, a sound, a physical object, its position in time and space, it's only there fleeting and temporally. In other words, it's constantly changing. So everything that is occurring is only a modification of a previously existing state. All states are moving. That what's appearing to us is something moving, something changing. So if we go back to the beginning of our meditation, where we were just meditating on nothing, if you just look into your mind's eye, just gaze into your mind's eye and gaze into nothing for a minute, and just imagine you're merging into nothing. Before we create anything, let's just have nothing. Matter of fact, why don't you bring your hands up for a minute and just tune in while you're gazing at nothing. And within this nothing, there's a tremendous potential. It's like dynamic stillness and emptiness, but like a capacitor that doesn't appear to have anything in it until it reaches a certain point of potentiality, then the energy can be released from it. But all the way up to a certain point, it didn't appear to occur. So we can think of the yin and yang symbol. Yin being like latent potential again, filling up, and at some point then it becomes yang. It expresses like the light coming out of the darkness, like the initial Big Bang. So God the Father is the latent potential, the seed, that when reflected upon, when interacted, when exchanged with, something's changing. That expression is the Shakti. So there's Shiva and Shakti. Latent potential, patent expression, something coming out. So the question is, and that's what's manifest, that's what creates apparent separation or differentiation. Something appears to occur out of nothing, whether it's a universe or a galaxy or a star within a galaxy or anything else that might have arisen out of it, or one of your cells or one of your atoms. Look at an atom, and somewhere, say, a hydrogen molecule is created, just some proton. Well, what's a proton but a positive energy, just expanding out of nothing? So whatever created, so we'll just call it one. In numbers, if we use math, that would be one. And but what is one? So say we're all sitting in zero. We're just sitting in latent potential. And all of a sudden we decide, you know what? What the heck? Let's create a universe. But I'm going to start with just maybe a point of light. We'll start real easy. So you create a light. Boom. It's out there. But where is out there? Where's the out there that you put the one? Where's the light relative to anything else? There's nothing else for it to be relative to yet, right? It's just the idea of something separated. There's a one. And that one, its potential was realized when what? Reflected upon. So it was a reflection of consciousness creating the apparent separation that created the differentiation, that created something, the manifest, we'll say. And now there's a pattern from 0 to 1 and 1 back to 0. Tick-tock, tick-tock, 0 and 1, like a binary code in your computer, or a Morse code sending a signal down a wire. And that certain pattern now has a character. And between the 2 points, there's typically a field. If you look at electricity, you'll see as energy moves from one point to another, all around the current or the direction that the electrical current is flowing, all around it is a field. Another part of that energy, it's maybe its opposite, like the 0 and the 1. The negative and the plus, the ions and so forth. And as that field is created, the field really creates the time-space continuum. It creates an expression that creates the imprint, and it's the imprint that creates the manifestation. So once you have an imprint in the field, once energy goes through that same imprint in the field again, it repeats the same pattern. So again, the pattern is created, the imprint holds the pattern, and maybe that pattern is a certain note. We can start with a real simple idea, a circuit. Just do, whatever. You make it up, or just do. Just one little something from here to there, and then back again. And now you have differentiation. Another way to look at it is if you look at an X and Y axis, you can create one axis, an X-axis, maybe just one going upward, like an arrow pointing up, and another one going to the right, horizontally, and say, well, now we've got another dimension. Now we have maybe the interval from left to right is a time sequence, and the interval going up is a distance. That, say, light will go up before it bounces back down, and we'll say, well, there's 30 wavelengths, 30 cycles in a second, or maybe it's sound. You say, well, what's the frequency of the sound? And energy is coming, but it's coming in waves. It's going from 0 to 1 and 1 to 0 and 0 to 1 and 1 to 0. It's going in a pattern. So we see the pattern creates the imprint that begins to create the basis, first of all, of intelligence, or at least a rudimentary protocol or program through which energy flows in a predictable pattern. So the Maharishi, who understood this greater than anyone I know, would explain it to us as this Shakti, or this consciousness and expression, begins to show itself through pattern, precision, and regularity. So the pattern is the direction in which the energy goes from one direction to another and perhaps back again. The precision is really, it's not haphazard, in other words. It's following a certain direction. It's going along the lines that have been formed within the field. And everything has a field. You have a field around you. You have a field around every cell. There's a field around the DNA. There's a field around the Earth, around the Moon, around the solar system. There's a field around the galaxy and throughout the universe, the unified field. And so everything works through electrical discharges and interactions, and they begin to take certain patterns. The pattern creates the field, and the repetition creates a circuit that's repeatable, and then there's both an attractive and repulsive force, the positive and the negative, right? That can attract other circuits or other types of energy formations. If we take the example of atoms, atoms have different amounts of protons and electrons, positives and negatives, broad speaking, a valence field and so forth. So they will attract maybe to others of their kind, forming a compound. Or maybe they'll react. They'll push against. They'll have a reaction. They won't mix. And as different patterns come together, the ones that form symbiotic relationships, the ones that perpetuate patterns and enable for the pattern to continue, create more interactions. And the more interactions and the more environments create a greater expression of the consciousness through the different interactions. And what ends up, those interactions end up being things like senses, the way the light interacts through your lens of your retina, or the different patterns you hear in your eardrum as you hear sound. As a worm, something like light would be very rudimentary, just a certain number of neurons giving a feedback loop of electricity saying, hey, it's bright up there. Whether that be a good thing or a bad thing would maybe depend on a certain intensity level. So very, but chances are it's not identifying objects and seeing colors and that kind of a thing. That developed as more of those feedback loops, more neurons, more of a retina, perhaps, or the sound, more of something like an ear, a hearing factory. Most animals use their olfactory senses more, like their nose, their sense of smell, picking up chemicals and recognizing where they came from, whether it's a food or it's a hostile environment or something like this. They would smell it or taste it. And so these energies interact in different ways. And the time-space continuum then gets created through this sense of differentiation, particularly through patterns of frequency over intervals of time, the plus and the y. Now, when we add another dimension, so we're talking 1 and 2 in terms of numbers, right? 0 as its origin, creating a 1, and then there's a 2. Back to the source, that creates a line. So we've got this line, or we can create lines, but we just have a certain flat dimension, we might say. When we go to 3, we now go to cube. Now we go to space. That changes things dramatically. That starts to make something was basically more abstract, a little more concrete, doesn't it? Here's a room. Or here's an object we can kind of conceive more of as a tangible thing. As an energy, it's actually holding space. So it creates time-space. It creates objectivity by its own dimensionality, through its own numbers. So 3 creates a physical dimension. And so that's one of the magics of 3. And then, of course, that's, what does that look like? If we were to take a circle, which represents either the completion, the infinite, right, or the whole, the complete, we see that all the other numbers are within it. And if you now take numbers, it's like a clock, but just count to 9, using 9 at the top, and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 around the circle, you'll see that the 3, the 9, and the 6 form a triangle. Just to give you kind of a vision of this. So if the circle, so everything is going to render back into 9. 3 creates that first dimension. The 6 creates a reflection of it. Just like in our DNA, there is a certain sequencing that gets mirrored, and those two working together actually create space in the DNA double helix that's twisting. So it's spiraling, and all circles are spiraling, if you didn't know. Everything is moving curvilinearly. And so we see this represented in what's known as the Fibonacci sequence, or the golden ratio, how certain patterns, how something extends, the length of, say, the shoulder to your elbow. And then there's going to be a certain percent of that that's going to go out into the wrist. And then yet another proportion of that segment from the elbow to the wrist is going to be represented from the wrist to, say, the first knuckle. And we'll see this also in the spiraling of a cactus or a rose petals or other natural objects, that there's a natural way that petals or limbs or living things begin to unfold, as it were. So there's an order arising out of the chaos, and that's the secret of 369. So if we look at the Merkaba, as Michelle would know, the symbol of the 369, and then it's reflected back through 4, 5, 6. So these are like two sacred pyramids or triangles, but they have the dimension. But they also have dimensions, so they're actually a pyramid, and they're fitting within each other. And then to complete, so that's the physical manifestation, and then 7, 8, 9 completes the circle, making from the extra dimensional to the physical dimension, merging back into the whole. And even if you look at the number 9, You see it's the continuation of the circle with some extension. So we'll draw a 9 with either a leg or a curving swirl coming out of the circle. But that's actually representing from the infinite coming out to some apparent differentiation and then coming back into the whole again. So if you take, say, a circle, so everyone take a deep breath, and even if you don't understand the numbers, just have fun with the images and the ideas of these patterns forming. So if you look at a basic cell cycle as an example, from 1 to 2, from 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, 34, and if you divide those up, you'll see that these numbers, and if we use a digital root, we won't see 3, 6, and 9. You go, well, what happens with that? Or if you have them. So what is it in the physical dimension? There's something working at another dimension within the physical dimension. Does that make sense? Another way you can look at it, if you've ever seen what's called the Mandelbrot fractals, you can see how as you render anything physically manifest out, it's made of a substrata that ultimately, you might say, comes back upon itself, because there's a toroidal activity of all expressions anyway. But if we go back to the circle, everyone take a deep breath and gaze into your mind's eye and just meditate on the circle. So that's what we call 360 degrees. So let's look at the digital root. If that's the completion, if that's kind of an image of God's expression, everything is within this circle, this universe. But the 3 plus the 6 equals 9, plus the 0 equals 9 again, because 0 is 9, really. It's a part of 9. So its digital root is 9. If you have that, we have 180 degrees. Well, if we look at the digital root, 1 plus 8 equals 9, plus 0, again, equals 9. If we have it again, if we quartered the circle, we have 4 90 degrees, 4 right angles from the center. Well, that's 9 plus 0, that equals 9. It's 9, it's 9. It all has to be a part of 9. It's all within 9. So 9 takes it back into the infinite. So everything comes from the infinite, becomes manifested, reflected, and then back into the whole. If we take the other sacred shape, which is the triangle, okay, well, its internal sum is 180 degrees. It's 3 angles, or in any way you make that triangle, it will end up being 180. So that's 1 plus 8 plus 0, that equals 9. If you take a rectangle, okay, it's the sum of all the interior angles is 360. Well, 3 plus 6 is 9, plus 0 is 9. And you can do the same thing with a pentagon. The sum of its internal angles is 540. 5 plus 4 equals 9, plus 0 is 9. So they all come from 9 and merge back into 9. Om is a 9. The sacred number of the Hindus is 108. 1 plus 0 is 1, plus 8 is 9. It renders back to 9. There are 9 months to give birth. 9 represents everything and it represents nothing. Another way we can look at it, take a deep breath, just for fun. And if we look at space, because space is a dimension that our senses and our mind are calibrated to, reality lies beyond the time-space continuum, though. Because everything within the time-space continuum is self-created. And it's constantly changing. And it all goes back to the source from which it came, like the conservation energy says. So space, take the speed of light. That is a constant used by physicists. And I argue it, to tell you the truth, because, again, Einstein used it in his famous equation, E equals mc squared. So energy equals mass times the speed of light squared. But the speed of light isn't a constant. See, he used it as a constant. And it relatively works as long as you're in this perspective of the time-space continuum. But in fact, the speed of light can vary as space itself can vary. But regardless, just had to let you know, don't get too stuck on any constants in the universe because they're all self-created anyway. But the speed of light is 186,282 miles per second. So if you add those numbers up, that equals 27. 2 plus 7 equals 9. Oh, is that a coincidence? Diameter of the Earth is 7,920 miles. That adds up to 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. The diameter of the Sun, 864,000 miles. 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. The diameter of the Moon, 2,160 miles. 2 plus 1 plus 6 equals 9. Plus 0 equals 9. So that's our space continuum. We look at an orb. We look at physically manifest things. We say, well, look, there is a sacred geometry to all things physically manifest. And curvilineature is part of that manifestation. Now we look at time. We can see seconds. There's, well, basically 3,600 seconds in an hour. 3 plus 6 equals what? 9. Because it's 0 and 0. You don't add those in. Don't need to, because 9 is complete. There are 86,400 seconds in a day. That adds up to 18. 1 plus 8 equals 9. There are 604,800 seconds in a week. We just skip, it adds to 9. There's, 2,592,000 seconds in a month. It's up to 9. 3,153,000. Oh no, actually 31 million. Excuse me. 536,000 seconds in a year. But again, when you look at the derivative, you render it down to its digital root. It's 9. How many minutes? You can do the same thing with minutes. How many minutes in a day? 1,440. Adds up to 9. Months to a pregnancy, 9. Matter of fact, you can go online if you want. You go to YouTube. You can go to my website. Go to Self-Awareness or Stephen Sadler. I forget which one, but I have a whole bunch of fractals. I also have music that vibrates at 432 hertz. So those are cycles per second. So if you add the 4 and the 3 and the 2, that equals 9. So it turns out that there is a certain semblance, it'll be very peaceful and calming for you to just listen to 432 hertz, to go into that vibratory rate, as it were. So 1 and 2 creates apparent separation. Those added together equal 3, which creates cube, first form. 4 and 5 build the reflection, because isn't 4 a reflection of 2? You're adding a 1, you're getting 6. 6 is making another pyramid within the pyramid. It's making a reflection that creates a whole, just like your binocular vision. And we tend to see things in terms of two aspects of the same whole. And if we reflect on that yet again, we see 7 and 8 take us to another, you might say dimension, but by the time it goes to 9, you're now transcending dimension, because dimensionality is only temporal, fleeting, and ultimately not real. And what's real is the permanent, continuous wholeness of being itself, or the consciousness itself, that, like the circle, undifferentiated, doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. And in fact, any parts that are within it that to our apparent or relative perception there may be, whether it be a universe or something as small as an atom, all of them are temporal, fleeting, and not ultimately real. But what is real is what provides for them to appear for whatever duration they are appearing, and in whatever ways they do appear, even though their own appearance will change, just like what I'm saying is changing, and the sound is changing, and the time appears to change. Your reflection on what's being said is changing. Different neurons are being activated during this moment of reflection, and you can observe it all. But it's all being self-created at the same time. We're creating the sense of I, observing the changes that's creating the universe around us. This is what our mind is perceiving. So I'd like you to just sit back from your mind and observe your mind and just enjoy it making its changes. It's hearing its sound, having its thoughts or feelings, having your own reflection of those thoughts and feelings, and now step back from them all. And now expand your awareness out. Expand your awareness out from your own individualized sense of self. Feel the vibratory rate and the natural, like not just the Fibonacci sequence moving through your body, but the actual Om, the vibration of life itself. Your DNA itself has a vibration. The earth itself has a vibration. I want you to expand out into the vibration of the earth. See if you can attune to the Gaiac energy. And doesn't that make sense? It's like tuning into nature, isn't it? Like we were talking about surfing, and how in a way that the earth has this feminine, it is the Gaiam, the earth mother, the provider of life, the physical manifest of the latent potential. The ocean is like the womb, and the different moods are expressed through the tides and the activity of the ocean, as an example, or a lake. And we can see, just like our own emotions, the movement of the energy, the fluids in our body, and the sensuality. If there's a great joy, there can be a time you can't go, maybe it's not a good time to surf, it's just messed up out there. And another time is there's just the most beautiful energy flowing like waves of love through an infinite ocean of consciousness. So I'd like you to breathe in and bring your hands up. And just imagine you're just catching a wave of love with me, and we're all just riding this wave of love on this infinite ocean of consciousness. So that could be like an expression of love, like an orgasm, or just a hug, just love moving through this medium. And we're all picking up on it together. So breathe in and feel the love. Ride this current of love like we're surfing the waves of love in this cosmic presence. And as you breathe out, just let go and let it flow and feel that love flowing through you. So what this does, what you experience in your meditation, is you're naturally going back into 9. You will find like, okay, I'm moving beyond the duality and the sense of physical sense. Even my own thoughts are kind of dissolving as the energy is drawing my individual consciousness back into the source. The undifferentiated source, which is the 9 or the 0. It's your individual consciousness merging into total consciousness. It's a part of your awareness merging into the total awareness, which in and of itself is undifferentiated whole. It just is what it is. It doesn't have an expression except to the degree that you express it through your own sense of self. So everyone breathe into your mind's eye and just see the infinite whole. And it can just be as it is, because it just is what it is, and you're just realizing what it is. And then you can say, okay, my mind and other minds and mind itself is taking that consciousness and delineating it to a movement. So it's kind of like water. That water in the ocean is now moving through a hose. Say you take the water and you say, well, I'm going to use this, and I'm going to move it through a hose. Well, isn't that what your brain does? It takes your consciousness and it moves it neuron to neuron to neuron to neuron as you have a thought. Your consciousness is moving in a direction. Your consciousness is moving the direction of your thoughts. that are being sequenced by your emotions, that are being activated by the molecules secreted by the electrical discharges and the patterns you created in your mind. So if you simply sit back like we are right now and saying, well, let's create discharges that create love and joy and peace. Let's create a unity within the harmony. If I can find aberrant energies like fear and anger and that kind of thing, I'll just let them go and allow my mind to start reattuning itself. Are you up with that? So take a deep breath and just tell your brain, or even ask your brain, aren't you up for that? Would you like to be free of all the other, whatever might have been disturbing you? Just create kind of like a, yeah, okay, even if your brain is doubting it a little bit, it can certainly think it'd be good to change, right? And so if your brain is open for the change has already started to occur, my friend. So just reinforce it now by having a greater clarity in how you want to think. So this is a way we can, so a lot of times people will say, well, how is 369 the master manifester? Well, if you have clarity in your mind, then you can create a clear manifestation. If there's an aberrant thought or an aberrant energy, it simply means that the energy is looking for an opening to come in to fulfill itself. And isn't that what your consciousness is? Isn't that what all your life is doing? It's trying to point out whatever you need to see so you can move to the next level and become another degree more conscious. Isn't the consciousness then using you to express itself to a fuller degree? And aren't you essentially reflecting on your own nature, which is essentially making you more conscious? Isn't your own consciousness becoming more conscious as you reflect upon your own consciousness? Aren't you becoming more conscious as you reflect on what consciousness is? Aren't you becoming more conscious right now? Take a deep breath and just observe yourself. And observe yourself becoming more conscious. And enjoy just being without having, you see, from here, nothing else has to happen. All your dramas don't really matter. Stop putting so much attention on your thoughts and your feelings. They're all illusions anyway, really. Maybe your drama is to point out how silly they are to begin with. Why are you even questioning why everything is as it is? Why not just be as you are and let things be as they are? You see? So everyone take a deep breath and just see your head is clear. Just see that there are no problems. You can go create more if you want, but right now there's no problems unless you go get them and create a thought or a feeling that is disturbing, which is your prerogative. But just realize you're doing that and they're self-created thoughts and problems. The universe works just fine without you. It works just fine without me too, by the way. This isn't an ego thing. And that's really the point, is that when we lose our ego, then everything can just be, and we just are, and everything's just perfect, because everything is just as it is. And it's only our mind saying, well, it should be like this, or it should be like that, or I want this, or I don't want that, or me, and then we say, I'm unhappy. Well, just a little bit tongue-in-cheek, I'm going to say, well, shut the fuck up. Just turn off your brain. Who cares what you think? Why do you even care what you think? Why are you making a big deal about your thoughts and your feelings and your ideas? And there may be another time that to you it seems like very important and it's insensitive that I would say such a thing. And, well, that may be true, but it's another perspective. So once you get what your brain is doing, once you see that your emotions are so tied into programs, and once you start to see that your programs really don't mean that much, or they only mean as much as you make them mean anything, and in essence they don't mean anything. By and of themselves they don't mean anything. They only mean anything because your association with them and what you make them to be. Do you see that? So everyone breathe in and just see that you see it. Just see that you see it and you're not a part of any of it. You're just seeing everything for what it is. May you all enjoy good health, long life, prosperity, happiness, and peace. And may the whole world live in happiness and peace. So if you'd like, bring your hands up again and just get a hug. I welcome you into the now. I invite you to let go of whatever was or you think might be or might not or may happen or anything else. Just be here. Here is real. Everything else is self-created. And the more you're here, the more you connect, the more you're just with me, the clearer everything's going to get. And that's by the grace of the divine, not by me. It happens to you in the same way that it happens to me. This sense of I that is Stephen, it's by the grace of God that I can see, and you can see the same thing I can see. Matter of fact, you can be the same thing that I can be, because your being and my being are the same being. There aren't separate beings. There's different beingness in different cell structures, but it's the same consciousness in everyone, everywhere, all the time. So breathe in and feel that. Bring your hands down, gaze into your mind's eye, and just be. Amen.